Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Devil's Witchcraft. I'm Azariel Flame, and I'll be your teacher over the next 13 months. I would just like to reach out to you and give a little bit of an introduction video for you, since I've had a number of you have been reaching out to me and asking about materials that you might need for the class coming up and things like that. So I thought I would just touch base with you. The class isn't set to begin for another 2 weeks yet, but I thought I'd give you some things that you can get and that you can prepare ahead of time. I know that we're still dealing with some supply chain issues due to COVID and whatnot. So I feel it's totally fair to give you guys a heads up on some of the things that you are going to need and that will be a major part of your craft moving forward. So first and foremost, I just wanted to thank you all for being here and for putting your trust in me, and that you are going to join me for the next 13 months. I think it's going to be an amazing journey. We are going to be looking at traditional witchcraft through my own lens. I've been practicing traditional witchcraft for over 20 years now. And of course, over that time, I have very much developed my own praxis with it. So you will notice that we are going to be using some spirits in this course that many would consider Christian. And I've had a couple of you reach out and say that you've had some issues with that and that you've had troubles with Christianity in the past and things like that. And trust me, I was right there with you. That's actually what started me on the traditional witchcraft path. And so I just want you to think of it more along the lines of, we are going to be doing sorcery and witchcraft here. This is not meant to be a religion, okay? And effective sorcery and effective witchcraft is able to take bits and pieces from any practice and any philosophy, and as long as they work and they get tangible results, we're able to work with them. So when it comes to working with spirits, what I found over the years was that as much as we all want for there to be a rich history of pagan spirits, pagan gods, and a whole list and catalog of spirits that witches worked with in the past, unfortunately, this just really isn't a thing. Any of those catalogs are most likely holed up in a Vatican library, and the rest were burned or were lost to history. So when I started looking for spirits to work with over the years, what I came to find was that the Christians actually did a really, really good job of cataloging the spirits that the witches would have worked with previously. So we're going to be approaching this completely from a different paradigm. We're not even going to acknowledge that really that Christianity exists. It's not a big part of this praxis. It's not a big part of anything. But what we are going to use is we are going to use their catalogs and their spirit lists, because, well, they're really some of the best catalogs and spirit lists out there. And of course, we are also going to be working with local spirits. We're going to be working with the land wights. We are going to be working with the spirits of your local flora and fauna. We are going to be working with the mighty dead and the powerful dead and the Aori and all of these spirits that are local to you. So if you can't wrap your head around working with spirits that have appeared in the grimoires or whatever, which are very covered in Christian overtones and whatever else, then I will be giving workarounds for you to work with the Emerald Temple without using those spirits. So you will be able to find your own spirits, and you will be able to create your own version of the Emerald Temple. This isn't like some of the other arcanas out there where you are stuck to using only the spirits that I give you. So there are workarounds for that. But I would like for you to at least try to humor me as we get into it and approach the course as if we're approaching it and Christianity never existed. Okay, and we are going to be working with these spirits as if they are the ancient gods and goddesses and local daemons and angelos that they were. Okay, so daemon in Greek basically equates to a tutelary spirit. These are spirits of the earth and the underworld that are able to commune with us and to teach us and are able to get things done in a timely manner because they're closer to our plane. They're also typically more individualistic, whereas the angels or the angelos are further away from our plane. They're in the upper world, and they are much more about the bigger picture and more the collective consciousness, group efforts, big plays, things like that. So we're going to be working with them as if we're working with upper world, medium world, and lower world spirits. Okay, so we aren't going to be approaching this from a Christian lens. Now, you'll see that I do use words like hell and heaven and things like that. Now, the reason for this is just simply because they're more relatable for most people. Now, whether we want to admit it or not, most people have a grasp on those terms and those concepts, whereas most people don't have a firm grasp on the words typically used for pagan things. Okay, so hell is, the etymology of it can be traced further back than Christianity and back into Old Norse roots. And we're talking about Helheim, which is also known as Hell, and is also a goddess named Hel. And so the place called Hell is where all people who died went in that cosmology. So think of it, when we're talking about hell, as we're equating it to the Greek underworld, or we're equating it to the Egyptian underworld or the Norse underworld. These are places where everybody went. This isn't some place where people went for eternal torment and anguish. This isn't a place where the gods sent you to spite you. It just simply wasn't. Now, I mean, there are places where that does exist in those realms, such as Tartarus. And then there are places in Helheim that are for the very, very truly wicked people of the earth. But I can pretty much guarantee that 99.9% of you taking this course are not going to fall into that category. You'd have to do some truly heinous things to end up being there. So when we're looking at this, we are not going to be looking at it through a Christian lens. The only reason that I am borrowing and using these names from the grimoires is because, well, they're spirit catalogs. They are, as far as I have been able to find, the best catalogs that have kept the names of the ancient spirits, gods, daemons, and angelos that old sorcerers or goas would have worked with in the past. And again, if you don't want to work with them, you absolutely can use the workarounds that I will be giving. If you don't want to work with the four kings and the four corners, you can absolutely work with the other spirit models that I'm going to give you for that. If you don't want to work with Lucifer because he is, you know, the epitome of the opposite of Christianity, I totally can respect that. Approach him as the Witch King. Approach him as the Horned God. And we're going to be looking at that, the Horned God concept, in the King of Kings lesson. And we're going to be looking at a bunch of the conflations that have been given to the Horned God over the years from different areas of the planet. We are going to be approaching it in a way that you will be able to find who your Witch King is. So if that isn't Lucifer for you, that is totally fine. That is completely acceptable, and you will have no troubles with that with this course. And for the spells that I give you and the rituals that I give you, the names can be interchanged with other spirits. You can call upon spirits that you are more familiar with. You can work with spirits that you would otherwise prefer to work with over the Christianized names. You know, for example, we are going to be working with Astaroth. Astaroth is one of the big three from the Grimorium Verum. And we know through etymology and history that Astaroth was Astarte. So Astarte was a goddess of fertility and a goddess of love and a goddess who was very much not the demon that the grimoires paint Astaroth as. So if you want to work with Astaroth as Astarte, by all means, go ahead and do that. Okay, so we will be looking at a lot of these conflations. Now, I am also a sorcerer and a witch that does a lot of conflation in my work. I do work with a number of different spirits and spirit names, but a lot of them come to me on their own and give me that information, and that's how I'm able to work with them. So I'm hoping to give you the tools that you're going to be able to build these relationships with these spirits, and you're going to be able to hit the ground running without having to do anything that you're uncomfortable with. Now, that being said, if you do want to work with the Christianized names, but you don't want to be Christian, you don't have to. I'm not Christian. I'm working with these names because they work. They have hundreds of years of sorcerers, witches, and magicians using them, using these sigils, using these seals, calling to them, and getting results. If we look at, perhaps some sorcery of late antiquity, like the Greek magical papyri, you will see that in a lot of the spells, there are often gods called from numerous pantheons together. You will see that there are many different conflations for these names. For example, if we just look at Hecate, she can be conflated with Diana and Artemis and Selene and Mene, and there's all of these lunar goddesses that are able to take this spot. And if we look at Helios, who is another big spirit in that papyri, you will see that Helios can also be conflated with Osiris and with Ra and with Abrasax. And, there's a whole bunch of these gods and goddesses that can kind of be linked together through their use in the magic of late antiquity. So look at it kind of more as we are going to be using tech that works. We are going to be using sorcery that works. We are going to be creating a temple where we're able to commune with spirits and work with them. We're going to be practicing spirit flight so that you can get out and actually work with the spirits directly yourselves, rather than having to rely on the knowledge and recordings of other magicians. Now, that being said, I am a spirit-led witch. I'm a spirit-led sorcerer. So you will be faced with some UPG in this class. And for those of you that don't know, that stands for unverified personal gnosis. And that's just the way that this praxis came together for me when I started writing this course 3 years ago. And it's just the way that it's going to be. And if you find that my conflations, my UPG does not fit what you want to work with, by all means change it. This is one of those courses where I am going to be giving you the tools to create a lifelong practice for yourself. So if you are worried about these things not fitting with your mindset, your praxis, whatever, know that they can be changed. And if you have ideas as we're going along, feel free to shoot them into the Q&A in the Facebook group, and I will address them and give you my ideas and, kind of let you know if I think that'll work or if it won't. I have taught many elements of this class to a couple hundred students now, and I've had really good success with it. So I'm fairly confident that we will find a way for this to work for pretty well all of you. So that being said, just try and approach this with an open mind. Approach it as if we are not even acknowledging that Christianity existed. We're just looking at these Christian grimoires as, kind of a reference point for spirit names, catalogs for hierarchy, things like that. And actually, if you look at those grimoires, you will see that the Christians are actually working with the demons too. So that kind of says a lot for the efficaciousness of the praxis and working with these spirits. If, exorcists are working with them hand in hand to get things done, right? So we're going to kind of look at it that way as well. We have a number of lessons to get through over the next 13 months. If you end up falling behind on these, that is completely okay. This is not meant to be something where you have to keep up to the class. Now, absolutely participate in the Q&As, participate in the group, talk to your fellow students, and do the work as you can. But if you fall behind, it's not the end of the world. This is meant to give you the tools for a lifelong practice. And once you've purchased the course and you've gone all the way through, you will always have access to the materials. And I am now going to be having the one Facebook group as the hub for everybody that takes this going forward. So you're going to be able to continue to mingle with people, continue to learn, continue to grow, and we're going to build a community out of this. So that is something that is going to be beneficial for everyone. And it also makes it so that if you fall a little bit behind, it's really not a big deal. And I don't want you to feel like if you haven't grasped a concept, you have to move on to the next one. Okay, so some of this stuff does stack. And so if you haven't gotten some experience with some of it, you may run into issues with future things. So at least try these things, try them once or twice, so that you have a working understanding of what is going on as we go forward. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to message or to post it in the group, and the Q&A is there for everybody to use. With the Q&A thread, please leave one comment per single question. If you kind of put in, 3 or 4 questions into one comment, it makes it a little bit harder to read. It makes it so that the Q&As take longer for me to get through. And it's just easier if you break it up into single comments for everybody to follow along. So the tools that you're absolutely going to want to have ahead of time. The first one is the book. That's kind of a big part of this class, is creating the Devil's Black Book. So this can be anything that you want it to be. I do recommend that you get some thicker paper for it. I did make the mistake with one of my first ones that I made, and I got really, really thin paper. And so when I would write on it with the ink would bleed through, and it wasn't so super awesome. But that being said, if you are constrained by budget, you can absolutely use a $10 or $20 or whatever book. Now, if you are on the other end and you want something that is going to be an heirloom, you can absolutely spend a few $100s and get yourself a nice, beautiful heirloom book. So without really getting into what the course material for the book is, basically, we are going to be turning this book into a living talisman. It is going to be a live magical tool that is going to be your live magical tool and your book of shadows moving forward with this praxis. We're going to be empowering it in a way that it lends energy and power to every spell that is written in it. Okay, so if you are constrained by budget, again, the first one that I ever used was a cheap little $10 book. I think I bought it from Paper Blanks. Okay, I now have a very beautiful one, but you don't need to ensure that you do that right off the bat. Again, this is a lifelong praxis. You will, over the course of your career, probably make several of these. So it's okay to start small and then work into bigger ones. Now, the other thing is if you're worried about making mistakes and things, don't worry so much about that. I know that we all feel that we have to make things as beautiful as they can be, but if you make a mistake in your book when you make it, simply scratch it out and carry on. Okay, so you will be good with that. When you get your book, you will want to get a covering for it of some sort. So I do recommend a black cloth. Silk or linen or cotton or whatever you have access to is fine. But a black cloth to wrap it in that is going to protect it from the elements. So if it can be a little bit bigger so that you can wrap it, a few times is kind of my recommendation. Again, without getting too much into the actual lesson, the book is going to be hit with water and dirt and it's going to be buried in places of power. So you will want something to protect it, and you'll want it to be black. Okay. You will want pens that you only ever use for writing in this book. Now, if you want to be all fancy and you want to get your dragon's blood ink and your dove's blood ink and your quill or whatever, and you want to do it that way, you absolutely can. If you want to just get a Bic pen, you can do that too. Okay, so whatever you choose is completely fine as long as it is only ever used to write in this book once you have consecrated it. Okay. Color is not a big deal. Black, red, or blue are all going to be acceptable for writing in your black book. I'm personally fond of blue because the devil showed me that blue is the devil's color. But if you want red because it's representative of blood, that's cool. If you want black because it's representative of the night, that's cool too. But I wouldn't use any other colors other than those three. That's kind of what the devil has shown me, is that the other colors won't be as effective. Now, the other thing is you are going to want a knife, a dagger. If you are in a country like somewhere in the UK where it is illegal to own a knife, your workaround can be that you can use a kitchen knife for this or whatever you have access to. The knife is not a 100% essential tool. I will say that right now, but it is a tool that will be used a lot if you do have it. It will be empowered, it will be consecrated, and it will be used as kind of your utility knife, not so much as the standard athame in Wicca. Okay, it can be used for delineating circles. It can be used for dispelling spirits. It can be used for, and should be used for, harvesting any herbs, trees, plants, things like that. So we're going to be doing a lot of work with local flora and fauna. So if you live in a country where you can carry a knife, I highly recommend that you get a knife. Now, you don't have to get a super fancy knife if you don't want. The devil has said that if you can get a handle that is a natural material like wood or horn or bone or something like that, that is better. That being said, I'm all about practicality and utility. So my knife is a military K-bar fighting knife because I know it's going to hold up and it's going to last me for frickin' ever. My handle is rubber. Sometimes you have to make small sacrifices for utility. So it does not have to be double-edged. I get asked that all the time when I'm showing people how to make a witch knife. It can be single-edged. It can be any shape that you want, as long as it's something that you can use for cutting herbs, cutting trees, carving runes, carving sigils, digging in the dirt, digging for roots. Okay, so, perhaps a karambit might not be the best for that, but a karambit works absolutely fantastic if you're harvesting mushrooms and clover and things like that. So you need to think kind of more what your local area is and what you have for flora and fauna that you're going to be working with. Okay, so there's that. You can also, if you really want to make it a super cool badass item, the sword is also traditional in traditional witchcraft. I personally use the knife because the knife is much more utilitarian. I can put it on my hip. I can hike into the mountains carrying it, no problem. I can walk around in public with it. I can, there's a lot more subtle things I can do with it. Whereas if I'm walking around with a sword, and don't get me wrong, I have many swords. I'm a historical martial arts teacher, so I have many, but the knife is much more utilitarian and is much easier to use for doing that. Now, you're also going to probably want to get yourself some incense. If you can burn incense where you live, definitely get some. If you can't, there's workarounds. We will work on that. I will address that in the lessons. You will probably want to get yourself some alcohols of some sort for offerings. If you are somebody who can't have alcohol around you because you have addiction issues or something, you don't have to have alcohol. Okay, I will put that straight out there. I don't drink, so I don't use alcohol all the time. I do keep it around because I do work with some spirits that's that's the thing that they prefer, but there are usually workarounds for most of these things. You're going to want to get candles. They do not have to be super expensive candles. They don't have to be all the proper colors. I highly recommend that you get yourself a bag of tea lights. You can get like 100 tea lights at the Dollar Tree for like $3. So go and grab that. That's awesome. Taper candles, again, go to the Dollar Tree or wherever your local cheap store is. You can get little chime tapers, like 3 inches tall or whatever, or even emergency candles. And you can get, like half a dozen for $2 type thing. You definitely don't have to go all out with your materials. Now, if you do, all the power to you. If you want to spend the crazy money and get some tallow candles to pay homage to the witches of old, absolutely do it. If you want to get the beeswax candles, absolutely do it. Okay. So there is no limit to what you can spend, but if you are on a budget, you can absolutely do that. Now, most of the herbs and stuff that we're going to be using are going to be locally sourced, picked ideally yourself. And so when I give you guys recipes, I will give you kind of, like similar workarounds that you can use. Like I'll give you the correspondences of what you can use with your local flora and fauna. So you don't need to necessarily worry about that. The majority of the tools in this praxis are going to be things that are gifted to you by spirits. Yes, gifted to you by spirits. If you looked at my first post when I made the group, you'll see that I was gifted a lovely, beautiful stang by the devil the day I launched the course. I went out for a walk. The wind blew in from the north, blew over a tree, and blew over an absolutely beautiful stang that was already cut and ready to go for me. I didn't really have to do anything to get it. All I did was heard the call that I needed a stang, gave offerings to the devil and said, absolutely, I thank you for giving me this opportunity, lead me to where it is. And then I listened to my intuition and was led directly to the stang. Okay, so a lot of these tools that you're going to be using are going to be locally sourced like that. Now, that being said, we live in the age of the internet. We live in an age where there's frequently lockdowns for strange reasons. So if you find that you can't find something locally, by all means, you can use the internet. You can order things. Absolutely. Lots of times spirits will make things pop up for you on the internet, and it's exactly what you're looking for. This is the modern age. Spirits have adapted to it. So these things are certainly useful. I buy things online all the time. I have an online witch store. So I am not going to discourage you guys from shopping for things either. But again, ideally, things that are found in the wild, things that are, found when you're out shopping in person, these are going to have a little bit more of a resonance for you. But some of my coolest tools I bought online, and they had a really good resonance as well. So you'll learn to find the balance as we go along here. What else did I want to cover here in this first video for you guys? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. The knife and the book and the pens are kind of going to be the biggest thing. If you want to get yourself some frankincense and some myrrh, that will be a good idea. We're going to be using frankincense for upper world work and myrrh for lower world work, and we can use a mixture of them for working with any and all spirits. So that will be a good one. Your incenses, if money allows you, try to use natural herbal incenses, loose incense if you can. If all that you can afford is stick incense, that is completely fine. Do not feel like you are not doing the work, because you absolutely are. And basically, you're going to be building the tools to commune with the spirits to get the tools that you're going to need. So when we get to the lesson on the weapons of Lucifer, I'm going to show you all of the possible tools that I recommend that you use in this praxis. But keep in mind that the witches of old and the traditional witches could do just as much with their mind and a couple herbs they found on the ground as a lot of modern witches can only do with all the tools. Okay, so if I dropped you onto a desert island without your athame and without your stang and without your cauldron, how long until you could do a spell? I know a lot of people that are experts in the field that couldn't. Okay, so I want to get you guys to that point where you are just as comfortable working with nothing as you are working with all of the things. And we will be presenting all of the rituals as if you don't need them. Okay, so I will be giving you the rituals where it says use this tool. I will be giving you the workarounds if you don't have that tool. Okay, so don't feel like when we do the weapons of Lucifer lesson that you need to go out and buy all of these things or make all of these things immediately or whatever. They are a fantastic aid. They do build up energy and potency over time, and they are wonderful to have. I have a fuck ton of tools. Okay, so don't feel that you need to not have anything either, but don't feel like if you're limited that you can't do this work. You absolutely can. Other things that you might want to ensure that you have ahead of time: an offering dish, a chalice or a cup of some sort, just for giving offerings, another chalice or cup of some sort for making holy water in. That will be having salt put in it, so just make sure it's something that can handle that. But other than that, pretty much everything else you are going to be able to find on the fly. So that's pretty much it for tools that you're absolutely going to want to get. Candles, incense, offering dish, offering chalice, chalice for making holy water, a book of some sort. It does not have to be a black book. Okay, so if you have a purple book that you want to use, that's totally fine. What I do recommend is you use whatever calls to you. Okay, so you need to have a resonance to this book. That is the most important thing. The more pages it has, probably the better. It'll last longer. Other than that, not a big deal. You're going to want the cloth to wrap it up in, black cloth. Candles, incense, that's it, man. Other than that, everything else we will be able to either give you workarounds for, or I will show you how to make them locally or whatever. Traditional witchcraft is very animistic practice, and we will be working with all your local spirits, your local flora and fauna, and we will be building a relationship with the landscape around you. So I'm very much looking forward to the next 13 months with all of you. Thank you all for your patience in me getting this video put together. I have been absolutely deathly ill the last week, but we will be good to go moving forward. So if any of you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the Facebook group and I will address them immediately, or as soon as I see them. And feel free to mingle in there, ask each other questions, post things, post your experiences, talk about the spirit experiences you've had, talk about your dreams, talk about the omens that you've seen when you've been out and about. Talk about the weird coincidences that start to happen when you start working with this praxis, because there are going to be lots of them. Once we open these gates and the magic starts working for you, your world is going to change. That much you can be absolutely sure. Okay, so again, any questions, feel free to ask, and please communicate with each other. Let's build a community. And I very much look forward to working with you all over the next 13 months. Talk to you in the next one.